What's going on, everybody? This is Al from PlaybookGamer.com, and today I'm excited to start a brand new series to the channel where I'm going to do a weekly breakdown show of every single week of college football this season. This gives me a chance to talk some real college football and gives you a chance in the comment section to discuss anything that you see here. Now, every week, I'm going to go over every score. I'm going to heavily talk about maybe 2 or 3 games every week, the big important ones. And we're also going to look at conference standings. And at the end, we could do like a quick look ahead into the next week. But today, we're going to look at week 0. We had a few games yesterday to actually watch, which is great. College football is back, and it started off with West Kentucky and Austin Peay. I watched the first quarter of this, and as you can see, West Kentucky ended up winning. But last year, Frank Zappi, the quarterback for the Hilltoppers, had just an incredible season. 6,000 yards, 60 touchdown passes. Well, he's gone. He's playing with the Patriots. And I was curious to see how the new guy would do, this Reed kid. He seemed to do just fine. He had 4 touchdowns, 280 yards. But kudos to Austin Peay for keeping it kind of close, but it just wasn't enough. Now, the next game, Nebraska Northwestern. This was the game of the day. Very entertaining, especially offensively. And we can go and look at some more detailed stuff here. And Nebraska was a 12-point favorite, but Northwestern was able to pull off the upset. You look at the box score, it just kind of went back and forth pretty much the entire time. And you look at the overall main stats, passing was pretty good for both teams. Running the ball was pretty good for Nebraska, but it was a whole lot better for Northwestern, especially in the second half. And then total yards, both teams really put up enough numbers to win. Just wasn't a very good day for the defensive side of things for some of these teams. Now, we can look at some more defensive stats. You see over here on the left, the biggest thing I wanted to point out was the turnovers. Nebraska had 3 turnovers. Northwestern only had 1. That was pretty much the key of the game there. So you go up to the player stats, and you see Thompson. This is the transfer quarterback from Texas. I thought he looked really good the first half, and then he kind of teetered off in the second. I'm not really sure what happened there. His numbers still look okay outside of the interceptions. Now, the Ryan Helinski, I thought he played really well throughout the day. Didn't have any picks, so good for him there. And you look at some of the rushing stats. Nebraska had 1 guy with over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked pretty good. But Northwestern had 2 guys that really put up some serious numbers. And that was another big deciding factor. And here's some receiving yards if you want to look at that. I was very impressed with this tight end of Vokalek. I thought he looked pretty good. I think he's a future NFL guy from what I could tell. But a lot of guys got to touch the ball through the air on that day. Now, one thing I'll say this before we move on to the next games is I talked a little bit about this in the previous community post. Scott Frost, it's just not really working out there. I think what they're going to try to do is he still has time. He can still probably win enough games to hold on to his job. But I'm hoping that if it doesn't work out, that they can bring in somebody that either can run like some unique offense, like a triple option of some sort, or get Jamie Chadwell over at Coastal Carolina. I really love his offense. Either that or go real nutso with recruiting, get you a big collective together and start spending some serious money on getting national recruits. It just all depends on what Nebraska is wanting. Do they just want to compete in the Big Ten West forever and that's good enough? Or do they want to compete for playoffs? It's up to them. I don't know what they want. Now, let's go back to some other scores. You got UNLV over Idaho State. I did not watch a lick at that. I assume that was a pretty typical score there or recap. Then you got, this was an interesting game. I didn't watch any of it, but I did notice the box score. UConn had a quick 2-score lead, and then in the second quarter, Utah State woke up, decided to play some football, and it was too much for UConn after that. I watched a little bit of the Illinois game. And this is the Fighting Brett Bielema's. Looks like they took care of business there. I didn't know what the spread was, but kudos to Illinois for taking care of business. Then you got Florida State. They had no issues over Duquesne. Then you have Charlotte and Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic took care of business there. No big issues. I'm not looking at these stats too much, but you can see them there. I watched a little bit of the North Carolina-Florida A&M game. Now, North Carolina ended up winning 56-24. But kudos to Florida A&M for keeping it kind of close. But as you can see in the fourth quarter, North Carolina finally put the thing away. We had a little small Texas matchup of North Texas and UTEP, but North Texas got the win there. Then you have Nevada, New Mexico State. Nevada was able to get the win. Looks like somebody got a safety out of all that, which is pretty interesting. I wonder how that turned out. But Nevada ended up winning 23-12. Then you got Vanderbilt and Hawaii. Now, I recorded this game. I was going to watch it, but it ended up being an absolute blowout. I watched some of the highlights. I do know that Hawaii is going through as much of his issues as you could ask for with the program. They got a new coach. Timmy Chang is their new coach. If you remember him playing Hawaii many years ago, running the run and shoot. They had a lot of players leave, so this doesn't surprise me at all. But if you look at the box score, Hawaii kind of kept up with them, but look at that third quarter, 35-0. You just can't come back from that. It's just too tough. Now, the next thing I want to look at is conference standings. There's only a couple things we got to look at here because there wasn't enough conference games to really matter with this. But this is the Big Ten West, and, of course, Northwestern got the win over Nebraska. Now, like I said before, Nebraska, they still got plenty of games left. They can maybe pull off 6-7 wins. Who knows what's going to happen there. Now, the other conference that actually had some conference games was Conference USA. You see North Texas and Florida Atlantic with some wins, and Charlotte and UTEP had some losses down here. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is just a look ahead into Week 1, the first official big week. No offense to Week 0. We got a small game with St. Francis and Akron. No offense to any of the fans there. That's not that big of a game. Then my beloved Tennessee Volunteers kicking it off Thursday night against Ball State. You see the spread, 33.5. I think we can cover that. It may be under. We'll probably win by 4 or 5 touchdowns there. Then you have Florida International and then Bryant. Then you got Oklahoma State and Central Michigan. That's a pretty wide spread there. Then Toledo, and I think this is Long Island. This could be somebody different. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look there. I'm not the Sharks. No, that is somebody else altogether. Somebody else could tell me exactly who that is because I really don't know. Then you have coming up UCF and South Carolina State. There's no spread for that one. I'm assuming UCF should take care of business there. Then you got the backyard brawl. I'm really excited about this matchup. I'm glad they're bringing it back. Pitt is a 7-point underdog or a favorite. This should be a pretty good game. I don't really know what to expect. I assume, and I guess Pitt can win, but you never know with that type of rivalry. Now, if you remember Graham Harrell, who played at Texas Tech, he was the offensive coordinator at USC for several years. He is now at West Virginia with Neil Brown. So they got 2 air raid masterminds trying to figure out what to do there. Wake Forest and VMI. Wake Forest, I assume, will have no problem in that game. Then you got UAB and Alabama A&M, Northern Illinois and Eastern Illinois. Then you got Missouri and Louisiana Tech. Missouri is a 19-point favorite in that one. I assume they won't have any issues there, but you just never know. This is going to be an interesting matchup. You got Penn State and Purdue. Penn State is a 3.5-point favorite. I would be curious to watch this game. It comes on at the same time as my Vols play, but I'll still go back and pay attention to this one. Then you got Minnesota over New Mexico State. Should be a blowout there. Arizona over in northern Arizona. That should be a blowout. Then you got Fresno State and Cal Poly, San Jose State and Portland, Eastern Michigan and Eastern Kentucky. Then we go and we have Virginia Tech and Old Dominion. I thought this spread was interesting. Virginia Tech is only an 8.5-point favorite. They're playing at Old Dominion, so just kind of watch out for that one. Something crazy may happen there. You never know. Michigan State is a 22 favorite over Western Michigan. And you got Charlotte and William Mary. Duke is a 7-point favorite over Temple. That may be an interesting game. This is going to be an interesting Big Ten game. Illinois and Indiana. Indiana is only a 3-point favorite there. So if you're a Big Ten nut, you may want to pay attention to that one. Then you got Kansas and Texas Tech. Nothing much to say there. Then you have Colorado and TCU. Colorado is a 10.5-point dog in that one. So you never know what may happen with that one. Then you got Maryland and Buffalo, then UConn, and I'm pretty sure this is Central Connecticut State. Am I correct? I think that's what that is. Yes. Then you got Michigan and Colorado State. I'm assuming Michigan will have no issues there. Then you got Navy and Delaware and Eastern Carolina, NC State. What's interesting is NC State is only an 11-point favorite. yet they're 13th in the country. So that's an interesting North Carolina matchup. Then you have Rutgers and Boston College. That looks to be a decent matchup with a 7-point favorite with Boston College. Texas A&M and Sam Houston. That should be a blowout. And then you have Iowa, South Dakota State, App State, North Carolina. Look at the spread on this one. This is going to be an interesting one. And it's at App State. So that's a big home game for Appalachian State. I'm curious to see how that one would turn out. And then you got Virginia and Richmond, Air Force, Northern Iowa. And as you can tell, there are no spreads for those, as there shouldn't be. Then you got Iowa State and Southeast Missouri State, UCLA and Bowling Green. This is an interesting packed or West Coast matchup. Arizona is a 6-point dog to San Diego State. If that is your thing, West Coast football, you may want to watch that. Then you have Miami of Florida and Bethune-Cookman. Then you got Arkansas and Cincinnati. This is a really big matchup here. I'm looking forward to watching this one. Arkansas is a 6-point favorite, and thankfully it's a home game. It's not a neutral site game, which is kudos to Cincinnati for willing to play that game. So I'm really looking forward to watching that one. Houston and UT San Antonio, that looks to be a close one possibly. I'm expecting Houston to possibly win that conference, by the way. Then we'll see if Nebraska can overcome that loss against to Northwestern as they take on North Dakota. Marshall and Norfolk State, this is a really big matchup. Georgia and Oregon, practically a top 10 matchup. But look at the spread. Oregon is a 17.5 dog in this one, and it's at a neutral site. I don't know why they can't just do a home and home. I think that's just more fun, especially being college football, but that's just me. Then you got Wyoming and Tulsa. That looks to be a decent matchup, possibly. Then you got Oklahoma and UTEP. Brent Venables, this is his debut as a head coach. He's finally a head coach. It took him long enough to pick a team to go with that. Then you got South Florida and BYU. BYU is a 12-point favorite there. Scroll down, and you got California and UC Davis. Then you got Ole Miss and Troy. Ole Miss, the Fighting Lane Kiffins, they're 21.5-point favorite. Then you got Nicholls State and South Alabama. Nevada and Texas State. That's a close spread, so that may be interesting. Then you got Ohio and Florida Atlantic. That's a close spread as well. Morgan State and Georgia Southern. Then we got James Madison and Middle Tennessee State. That's a fairly close spread. And you got USC and Rice. That is, or if we got Lincoln Riley, this is his first game at USC. I assume he will have no issues there. Baylor, a lot of people are thinking Baylor is going to win the Big 12 this year. I can see it happening. Dave Aranda's done some good things since he's been there. Then you got a matchup. This is my scheme game of the week. Army and Coastal Carolina. Now, I talked about Coastal Carolina earlier when talking about Nebraska. I think Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina, I love what he does offensively. It's like a new age triple option. He does a bunch of weird stuff. And going up against the Flexbone triple option, I think that's just going to be a fun game to watch. Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Make sure you watch that if you want to see some weird stuff on the field. Then Vanderbilt and Elon, there's no spread for it. Arkansas State and Grambling. Then you have Wisconsin and Illinois State. Southern Miss and Liberty, that's a close spread. That may be a decent matchup. Auburn and Mercer, I assume Auburn will have no issues there. Kentucky and Miami of Ohio. Kentucky, this is the first of many very weak games they have on their schedule. They got a schedule that's really lined up for them to win a bunch of games. Then you got Kansas State and South Dakota, no spread there. Then Louisiana and then southeastern Louisiana. Then you have Tulane and UMass, and this is a game I'm really excited about. I'm going to try to watch every bit of this one. Utah and Florida, this is the Urban Meyer Bowl. Utah is coming down to Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Good for them willing to do that. They are a 2.5-point favorite. I highly recommend you watch this. I'm curious to see if Billy Napier is going to do well at Florida. I think he'll be fine. I think he's a pretty decent coach schematically, and he's hired 300 people for a staff, just try to bring in as many people as he can in terms of recruiting and just helping out the program in general. But I'm really looking forward to that game. Then you got South Carolina, Georgia State. What's interesting is South Carolina is only a 12-point favorite, and they're at home. So I don't know if that means Georgia State's supposed to be halfway decent this year. I just don't keep up with them enough. Then you got Mississippi State and Memphis. This has got a bit of a history the last couple of years. I know there was a controversial loss Mississippi State had over to Memphis, 2 seasons ago when Mike Leach's first season there. Either way, they're a 14-point favorite. If you want to watch plenty of air raid, this is the game to watch. Then you have arguably the best matchup of the week. It just kind of depends with Ohio State and Notre Dame, top 5. Marcus Freeman, this is his first head coaching job, first game as a head coach, and he's going up against maybe the best team in the country outside of maybe Alabama. But Ohio State's a 17.5-point favorite. So I don't know what to really expect there other than probably Ohio State's going to win. Then you got North Texas and SMU. That's kind of a close spread. Then you got the number 1 team in the country, Alabama and Utah State. That should be a rout. Stanford and Colgate. Texas and Louisiana Monroe, you can see the Quinn Ewers kid. He finally got the starting job there at Texas. This is an interesting matchup. Louisville and Syracuse, that's a short spread if that is your thing over on the East Coast. Then you got Maine and New Mexico, Texas Tech and Murray State. Then you got Washington State and Idaho. This is an interesting West Coast matchup. Probably the most important one of the bunch, I guess, just in terms of, well, I don't know if I'd call it important, but it should be a decent one. 3.5 or a 3-point favorite to Oregon State. I think that would be a pretty good one. Oregon State had a decent season last year, if I'm not mistaken. But that's going to be an interesting matchup if you're going to still stay up by then. And it's on ESPN if that tells you anything. Washington over Kent State. I should have said over, but they're a 22.5-point favorite there. Then you got Western Kentucky and then Hawaii. Western Kentucky is a 16.5-point favorite there. Then we're heading into Sunday officially. This is technically a Saturday night game. But we got one Sunday night game with LSU and Florida State. That's a pretty big matchup. LSU is a 3-point favorite, but it is in the Superdome. They should have played that down in LSU, but whatever. I'm curious to see how Brian Kelly and that team does. I'm expecting LSU to win. I still don't have a whole lot of trust and faith in what's going on in Florida State. And then on Monday night, we have number 4 Clemson taking on Georgia Tech. Clemson is a 21-point favorite there. Now, since I'm going to do this every week, it'll probably be next Tuesday before I do the next one because of this one game alone. I at least want to bring that one in. So hopefully you enjoy this. It'll get a little bit better over time once I figure out what I want to add to it. And there's going to be more stuff to cover because I only really talked heavily about one game this week, which was Nebraska Northwestern. But I'm going to try to cover 2 to 3 to 4 each week, especially the important ones. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.